Okay, let's do a couple of quiz questions. Look at this piece of code. A equals input, and then B equals to 2, C equals A plus B. Well, you know this would result in an error, right? Because this is a string and this is an integer, and strings and integers cannot be added. Well, it worked in the case of a print statement because the print statement has a bit of intelligence behind it. But if you just add a string and an integer together, it will not work. Okay, how do we fix this problem? There are three options. A equals to string of A. So we are typecasting A to a string. Is it really required? So this is actually not required because A is already a string. So this is useless. A is int of A. So we are basically converting A, which is a string, to an int. Now, after doing that, you can add it to 2, right? So this becomes whatever the user has entered. Say the user has entered a 3, and then B is 2, and those two things can be added together. So this works. How about this? B equal to string of. Well, this is kind of tricky because this one is a string, the first one, because we know that the input function returns a string, and we know that this is an integer because it is 2. By default, Python takes it as an integer. What we are trying to do here is we are also trying to convert B to a string. What if we convert this also to a string and try to add them up together, this and this? Will it work? Yes, it will work. But will it give the intended results? No. So you'll get rid of the syntax error. You'll no longer have the syntax error. So in terms of code correction, yes, it will not give you a syntax error. But I don't think it will give you what you really want. What is the intention? The intention of this program is let the user tell you a number and put it in A. Say I'm typing in 3. That will be taken as a string because the input function does that. Now we want that as an integer, and then B equals to 2, C equals A plus B, which is 3 plus 2, 5. That's what we really want. But this piece of code, what it does is it converts this to a string because it is already a string anyway, and it converts B to a string. So 3 plus 2 becomes 32 because 3 is a string and 2 is a string. So it will get rid of the syntax error, but it's not really the correction that we require. So the answer is this is correct and this is also correct because it gets rid of the syntax error, but this is wrong. All right, what's the second question? A equals int of input and then B equal to 2, C equal to A plus B. So will this code correct the error that we had previously? Well, let's see. Now input and then brackets, this function returns a string, and use this type conversion, int of a string becomes an int. So A becomes an int, B is already an int because it's assigned to 2, and C equals A plus B, int plus int is also an int. So will this work? Yes, it will work. Let's actually try it and see. So what are we doing here? A equals int of input, and then B equals 2, C equals A plus B, and then print out C. You can do a print statement, or in Jupyter you can just say C and then the last statement will be printed out. Shift enter. Now we have to input some value for A. Let's say it is 3. Now this is returned using the input as a string, but we are doing this explicit type conversion to an int. So 3 as a string that input returns will be converted to an integer, and that will be stored in A. So A becomes an integer 3, and B is an integer 2, C is 3 plus 2, C should be 5. Let's see. 3, enter. There you go. You got the result. 3 plus 2 equals 5. So will this code fix the error? Yes. A equals 1, B equals 2.5, and C equals A plus B. What is the type of the variable C? Well, we have already seen some examples. If you add or perform operations between an integer and a float, what happens? Will the resulting variable be a float or an int? Let's see. What happens if it is an int? Well, if it is an int, you lose this, right? Integers cannot have decimals. Only floating points can have decimals. So if you add them and keep them as int, keep this thing as an int, 1 plus 2 becomes 3. That's not the correct answer. 1 plus 2.5 is 3.5. In order to do that, what Python does is it converts this also to a floating point and then say A plus B is 3.5. So what type of variable is C? That is a float. So string is wrong, integer is wrong.